Hey, what's up guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at every single class in the game and how best to build them in Squire Royale. So this is obviously the most popular game mode. Everybody has been having a blast with it. And I've also seen a lot of people asking for build recommendations, so that is exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to talk about perks, skills, and gear. So while the goal of this video is not to be a complete class guide, in the sense that I'm not telling you how to play the classes, I'm not going to tell you about, how to position yourself in battle or how to swing every weapon. What I am going to do is I'm going to show you how to build them, especially for Squire Royale. And in doing so, I'm going to talk about a lot of the nuances and a lot of the synergies that you can get between different perks and skills and how they relate to your build. So yeah, this is going to be a long video, feel free to skip around, but if you do enjoy it, please like and subscribe, it helps us to be seen. I do plan on making a part 2 that talks about more specific tips for playing the mode. And if you wanted to look up any more in-depth information on how to play each of these classes, there are tons of class guides out there. And so that's something I recommend in general with this game. There's lots of smart people. They can teach you a lot about the mobs, the bosses, and the classes. So yeah, thanks again for watching guys, here we go. So I'm going to start off with Longsword Fighter, and there's a lot of different ways you can build this. However, I like to do Swift with Defense Mastery and Barricade, as well as Sword Mastery. So these two synergize really well. They'll give you about an extra 10% PDR when you're in a defensive stance. And you get a lot of magic resist. Other skills you could use as well, you could do projectile resistance, you could do Last Bastion, and actually in Squire, this one is super good. So you could get rid of these two and just go with Last Bastion, and then in place, you could also put in Counterattack. That one gives you action speed and move speed bonus when you're blocking. You could do Combo Attack, but it probably wouldn't with a Longsword. Adrenaline Spike is pretty decent too. You're not going to use any of those other ones, but probably those are the ones that I would probably go with, are these two right here. Now for the skills, I think Second Wind and Adrenaline Rush are the best two skills on Fighter, no matter what build you're going for. I think a lot of the issue right now with Fighter is that you're pretty damn slow in Squire. So you could opt to get rid of Second Wind and put on Sprint. That way you're actually able to catch everybody. Especially works well when you have a healer, but that is my recommendation. So as far as gear goes on Squire Kit Fighter, I typically run it like this. No matter if I'm using Longsword or Shield or Halberd, it pretty much stays the same. Armit is really good right now. Houndskull is also very good, but it gives you -5 magic resist, and the Armit does not, so I typically like the Armit, especially because having that extra strength helps a lot. For chest piece, I use Dark Cuirass because it's got good magic resist. Fine Cuirass gives you a little bit more PDR, but I think the Dark Cuirass is just better. Obviously, we're going to be using Plate Pants here for the extra PDR, and Heavy Gauntlets. You could use Light Gauntlets, and you don't have to use Plate Boots, although I really like to have high PDR. Another good option again would be just the turn shoe. So yeah, you're going to be at 283 if you're wearing the plate boots with 48% PDR. So 283 with 48, we're at 45, so we lose 3%, but then we gain an extra 4 move speed. So I think turn shoe is probably better, honestly. And now we're going to transition over to Halberd Fighter because a lot of people also enjoy Halberd. And with that, I just throw on Last Bastion, get rid of Barricade, and put on maybe, let's say, projectile resistance. And then if you wanted to use a longbow, you could also run Weapon Mastery here, but I think probably something like this for Halberd is your go-to. And again, you could get rid of Second Wind and put on Sprint. Alright, next up we're going to talk about Sword and Board Fighter, and again, you have a couple different options. If you like to use swords, the Falchion's pretty good right now. I often will use something like a Flanged Mace as well. And so we're going to keep on Swift and Defense Mastery. Even though Swift only gives you 5 move speed, it's still worth it because otherwise you're just unbearably slow. And then you could also run Last Bastion instead of Defense Mastery. However, again, I'm going to opt for Barricade. When you're using a shield, the point is to be blocking a lot, and being extra super tanky while you're in that stance helps a lot. And the reason that I run a Flanged Mace a lot instead of swords on Fighter now is so that I can get Shield Mastery instead of having like Sword Mastery. I'll go for this. That allows you to move faster while you're in a block stance, and it also gives you action speed on your next attack or block after you successfully block somebody, and 10 physical damage bonus now. So that's really good. This is pretty standard. Alright, so now we're going to be talking about Slayer Fighter, and obviously you're going to want to run the Slayer perk, as well as probably dual wield. And then I'm going to put on Sword Mastery, and let's see, for the last perk here, Combo Attack is very strong. This is like a max damage build and max move speed. So, alright, so taking a look at the gear and weapons, we're going to have a Flanged Mace or Warhammer. You could also do Morningstar if you wanted to, but you'd have to put on Weapon Mastery. And then this is something that a lot of people don't know, but when you have a short sword in your offhand, it actually applies Sword Mastery even when you're swinging your Flanged Mace. So that's kind of a hidden little mechanic here. You don't actually have to run the short sword in your primary, and you don't only get Sword Mastery to apply while you're swinging the sword. But yeah, this is a very good combo. It works for me pretty well. We're going to be running a leather cap for the highest amount of armor and headshot reduction. It's like the only helmet you can wear. I like the Light Akaton for a little bit of magic resist and max health. Light Akaton is the best chest piece in the game for all non-plate melee classes, so I'm using cloth pants here for a little bit more dex, and then strength gloves, which you could use reinforced instead if you wanted to max out your HP. That's a perfectly good option here because you already do so much damage that it doesn't really matter having that little bit of extra strength. So I would probably go with the reinforced actually. And then turn shoes are really good. They give you just as much move speed as the Lightfoot boots do, but you also have armor and you get a little bit of dex as well. So those are my choices for Slayer Fighter. And at this point, that's pretty much every build for Fighter, so I'm going to move on. Alright, so this is the Cleric build that I've been running in Squire Royale, and it's been absolutely busted in every single way imaginable. So we're running all knowledge gear. We'll look at the spells really quickly. So you're going to be Caster with 3 heals, Res, and Protection. The perks we're going to be using, Perseverance and Blunt Weapon Mastery. Those are both very good. Advanced Healer, obviously 4 heals. In Squire, this is like the only perk that you must have at all times if you're running a Healer Cleric. Perseverance, I never take this off Cleric either. These two always stay on my Cleric no matter what build I'm doing pretty much. Blunt Weapon Mastery just is really good because you've only got 11 strength. And then Requiem is broken and absolutely the best thing to run on Cleric right now in Squire, because having a teammate go down is devastating and it's almost impossible to recover from it in Squire Royale. So giving them that free 58% HP when they come back in, and then being able to get them full HP with like 1 Holy Light is just crazy. And then instead of running Judgment, I run Smite just so that I can go in and do a little bit more damage. So that's the best Cleric build right now if you want heals. So now let's take a look at what we would run if we were doing more of a frontline Cleric. And honestly, not a whole lot is going to change, except we're going to get rid of these 2 perks. We're going to keep these on. And you can do it a couple ways. You can do Faithfulness and Brewmaster. Protection from Evil is also a great choice. The only problem is that you have to bring Ale in, and that's kind of annoying, but this does work really well. Okay, so now we've got to change up our gear. We're not going to be running knowledge gear when we're doing this, so. And I'm going to probably stay like something like this. You could use Quarterstaff as well if you wanted to. You could also do a Magic Staff to bonk with. That's pretty good. But yeah, so let's look into the gear a little bit. A couple good options here between the Hound Skull and the Top Helm. I probably tend to go with Top Helm just because it doesn't give you negative magic resist. That's the only downside right now with the Hound Skull. Either heavy or light gauntlets are good. I'm probably going to opt for light gauntlets just to get 1 more agi. The move speed is your enemy on this build. That being said, we are going to go for the turn shoes. For chest piece, you can do champion armor. And then for legs, since we're going to be so unbelievably slow if we do anything else, like I would like to do plate pants, but we just really can't afford to do that. So what we're going to do instead is just go with some cloth pants. Okay, now let's go look at the stats really quickly. We've got only 124 HP, but this is Squire, so you can only ask for so much. 288 move speed, that's not bad. And then we're right at 33% PDR, which is perfect because the max is 65, and this is going to get you 30 more, so we're going to be right at 63% PDR with Divine Protection active. And then we're going to be using Smite as well. So with the Brewmaster, you're going to get 10 extra strength, so you'll be in the positive territory rather than negative here. And then you're also going to have Blunt Weapon Mastery going, so you'll hit pretty hard. You take very little damage. This is a very solid way to play Cleric right now. If you wanted to, you could also opt to get rid of the Champion Armor for something a little bit faster. I mean, this is going to be one of your best options again, the Light Akaton. And if I go back and look again at the stats, I was at 288 before, now I'm at 293 with 28%. So you'll only be at 58% PDR, but that's still pretty dang good. So either one of those, you really can't go wrong. Next, we're going to move on to Ranger, and in Squire, it's not the best class, but it can still do pretty good work. So let's take a look. There's a few different options here. I still like to use Pin Shot and True Shot. I'm also running Wind Fletch, Spear Proficiency, Nimble Hands. I'm probably going to get rid of Purge Shot when I'm playing Squire to go for a quick reload. You could keep it on, but you know, let's talk about some of these perks really quickly because there's a couple new ones, and I want to lead you guys away from picking any bad perks while I'm here. So Camping Mastery, don't ever use this one. It's just not worth it. Chase can be okay especially if you're playing solos, but yeah, for this build, I probably wouldn't use Chase or Crippling Shot really. So you can also build Crossbow Ranger, and it's still pretty decent in Squire because of all the armor pin you get on the crossbow. Point Blank Expert in Squire is not good because it's only really good with the Serve Bow, and the Serve Bow does no damage when you're in white gear. Longshot Expert is not good in any scenario as far as I'm aware. I've tested it a few times, and you have to be like super far away before you would even get as much damage return as you would from Ranged Weapon Mastery, which this one, I don't ever use this one either. It's a bad perk. I would really highly suggest you staying away from it. Going back up here, we got Kinesthesia, which can be a very, very good perk. If you don't run Spear, you could probably afford to put that on as well. I like Wind Fletch right now a lot, so I don't run Kinesthesia anymore. But I do love that perk, it's very good. First Aid is incredibly good right now, and it's good in HR, and it's good in Norms, it's good in Squire. If you have a healer especially, don't worry about this one. Purge Shot is really good, but in Squire you're probably going to be running into a little bit less opportunity to use it, so I tend not to. Sharpshooter is still good, but it's only going to give you about an extra 5 to 6 damage in Squire. And then finally Trap Mastery, just don't use it. So a couple other options you have, especially like when you're using a Crossbow Ranger, Backstep's really good. And then you also have Field Rations. Explosive Shot is just not good enough to use, especially in Squire when your stats are all low. Forceful Shot is very good, and especially when you combine it with Quick Shot, this one can really keep people away from you. It's super good. Quickfire is one that you could also use in place of True Shot or Pin Shot. Overdraw is really good right now. It's like a high risk, high reward thing. If you charge your bow up for a few seconds and you get that one shot off, it is going to hurt them very badly. And then finally Multi-Shot, which is the biggest crutch on Ranger, and I hate this skill. I think it should be nerfed a little bit. It's just such a stupid ability to have on a ranged class that you can just delete people when they finally catch up to you. But that being said, it is very good, and you can also combine it with Overdraw, which is pretty stupid as well. But you do have that option. So for gear, obviously I'm using the Demon Skin, which gives me an additional 2 strength. You're going to want to at least hit 16 strength, at least 15 I guess, so that you're not in the negative damage territory. So right now I've got the Spingen Helm on. You don't have to use that. You could also use a Forest Hood. Heavy Gambeson's probably not like the best choice either. I just like to have a little bit of health actually, so Padded Tunic is probably your best friend here. You could use the Wanderer's Attire. That's a very good option as well. For pants, cloth pants or trunkos, just depending on if you need the strength. And then for the boots, you can swap between heavy boots and the adventure boots. Heavy boots are loud and slow, but they give you a lot of strength. So this is probably the most optimal build right here for Squire. You know, you could swap this one out if you wanted to, but always keep Nimble Hands on. Spear Proficiency is just so incredibly good. And then you've got Wind Fletch, which really, really helps you to hit all of your shots. So we got 20 strength. Obviously, I'm using the Demon Skin, so you might not be exactly where I'm at, but we've only got 7.5% action speed and 5% physical damage bonus, though. So that's why I'm saying Ranger and Squire is kind of weak. but it can still do work as long as you're hitting headshots and, you know, just spamming pretty well. All right, moving on to Rogue. You got a few different options on Rogue. This is my favorite and what I think is probably the best Rogue build right now. I've been having a lot of good luck with it. We've got Hide along with Stealth, and you could also put on Creep in place of one of these, but we're running Dual Strike because it's really good right now, being able to pop out of Invis and hit them with Dual Strike. It actually, Ambush applies to both of your hits, which is kind of broken, but also very good. And then I'm using Dagger Mastery and Poisoned Weapon. So I guess out of all of these, probably the only one I would swap off is Poisoned Weapon if you wanted to put on Creep so that you could really get up on people without them hearing you. So let's go over the gear really quick. So basically when you're in Squire, you're going to want to run as much strength as you possibly can. So you have two options really. I probably would keep these three pieces on. And then you could switch these out though. You could go like Trunk Hose for your pants. Not that it really makes too much of a difference, but it's a little bit more PDR, I guess. And then instead of the heavy boots, if you wanted, you could do the, where are they? The turn shoes. So if you want to be a little bit faster, this is a very good combination, and you have positive fizz power bonus with it. So taking a look here, I've got 10% action speed, 303 move speed, and then we've got 1% physical power bonus, but Dagger Mastery helps you to do a little bit more damage, and so does Ambush. We're also going to be using the Rondelle and Stiletto. They both have armor pin on them. And then for the offhands, we're going to use Rapier with Hand Crossbow. Alright, so now to look at the rest of the perks and kind of go over what options you have. Back attack is very strong, but you pretty much have to use Creep, and you can synergize this with Shadow Step really well. Shadow Step is very good. If you're good with hitting your throwing knives, you could also use Lethal Mark. When this one is working properly and you can reapply it, this one's going to be really, really good. Another really good perk for Rogue is going to be Double Jump. So just having the mobility from Double Jump is actually just crazy. There's so many situations where you can get out of a pickle that nobody else can get out of, you know what I mean? Like, there's lots of little ledges you can jump to and nobody can touch you. It actually helps a lot too just in combat, because if you're jumping over their head and they're having to hit your legs while you're above getting headshots, you know, it puts you at a big advantage. So I like Double Jump. I used to not use it because I thought it was kind of a waste in combat, but actually it's very, very useful. Creep as well, I've mentioned before. Creep is extremely good because you basically can't hear a rogue when they're in Invis and using Creep. Dagger Mastery, I had this one on a minute ago, but it's very good. Jokester is one that I don't ever really use, even though helping with 2-all is kind of nice. I just think there's more effective perks that you can put on here. So if you go into Squire Royale with Pickpocket on, you are just trolling and wasting your and everyone else's time. More than likely, you're just going to get shit on. So I just don't understand why I see so many pickpockets in Squire Royale. It's just ridiculous. You also have the option to go no invis and just kind of play in the darkness, and in that case I'd probably put on Rupture and get rid of Stealth for something like Creep or Double Jump, you know. Thrust is really good too for the armor pin, and then you know, traps and locks, just bring in lockpicks, man. Like, they're not that expensive, just bring in lockpicks. Trickster, I've tried this one out and I don't think it's really worth it. Even if you're running the Lethal Mark, it just doesn't help enough. And Veil of Shadows, I don't think this perk's very useful. You have to be really low HP for it to activate, and then you have to be crouched when you get hit, or else it'll just go away. For the other skills, however, let's take a look real quick. We've got Caltrops. This one actually can be good if you're playing solo, but for a team situation, I wouldn't use Caltrops. Cutthroat's really good, especially against something like a caster, but again, my mentality when I'm dealing with casters is I kill them in 3 hits, so why bother silencing them? That being said, it can also be really helpful against fighters that would have tried to use Second Wind or Adrenaline Rush or anything like that. Rupture is really good for a little bit of extra damage. If you just want to pop in and hit somebody and then run away, you know, you can just kind of bleed them out over time. Again, Shadow Step, very good. Being able to pop behind somebody with a throwing knife or just with a dagger can really throw people off. Smoke Pot's really only useful if you're playing solo and you're just trying to rat, so don't use Smoke Pot. Sneak attack, it can be good actually. So just run sneak attack with dual strike. And this is kind of going with the build where instead of running hide, obviously, you're going to be sitting in the darkness around a corner waiting for somebody to come into the room, and then you just absolutely melt them with one attack. I mean, this is a brutal combo, but you just have to play it really sneaky. Finally, we've got tumbling, which sucks, and we've got weak point attack, which can be really good, but again, there's just so many better skills right now that I don't think weak point attack is worth it. That being said, make sure when you're playing rogue, especially if you've got things like poison weapon or rupture or shadow step on, make sure you're going to your woodsman and you're buying a bunch of throwing knives. You're going to need a lot of throwing knives. That's how rogue is going to be most effective. And I guess I should just mention I'm using the Philidian skin that's got the extra 2 decks on it, so that helps me out there. Alright, so moving on to Wizard. I am a personal fan of Overload and Sage together with Fire Mastery and Quick Chant. This is pretty much like the only build that I ever run on Wizard. Yeah, this is pretty much the only perks that I will ever really bother with. They're just the best. For the skills, actually in Squire Royale, I would probably bring Meditation because you could do 10 spell. Like, I love 10 spell and it's so good. But the problem is that you have to do 2 campfires to get all your fireballs back if you're in Squire. So, yeah, these are probably the best spells. You know, what you're giving up when you run 5 spell is like, you know, you don't have to do Lightning Strike or whatever. You could bring in Zap instead. But you're giving up Light Orb, you're giving up Haste and Biz for sending in your Frontline. So, bring in Magic Missile for mobs. I guess you don't have to bring in Magic Missile. You could bring in, you know, you could put Lightning Strike back on or whatever, but, you know, Fireball, Ice Bolt, Explosion, Zap, these are like the critical, all 5 of these are really like the critical wizard spells, so that's probably what I would run. But again, you know, with Explosion you only get 6, you get 8 Lightning Strikes, and they actually do really good damage too. So, but yeah, just having that meditate on, you're going to be able to sit down between fights and get all your spells back a lot faster than you would if you were running 10 spell with campfires. Intense focus, or instacast as people call it, is not really that good. My reasoning is like, okay, the best wizard build is to run 10 spell, which you can't do if you've got intense focus on, and then you have the same problem that you would on a 10 spell when you're running intense focus, which is that you don't have meditate. So I don't ever use intense focus. And then Arcane Shield, I guess we will build a Bonk Wizard really quick. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so when you're gonna do Bonk Wizard, you're gonna run Arcane Shield. That gives you extra damage reduction. You're also gonna run Reactive Shield for more extra damage reduction. We're gonna be running Staff Mastery. We're gonna be running Ice Shield. And then I actually like to run Melt, because it gives them minus 15% PDR and projectile reduction, but whatever. And then what we would do for the gear is we're gonna build pretty much for high decks. You could bring a crossbow in too. A lot of people run crossbows on this build. I don't usually bother with the crossbow, but you can. So you're gonna be running leather cap, and then we're gonna be looking for a good blend of actually dex and will. So leather gloves are pretty good. We've got adventure boots, or again, you could do turn shoe, which is what I'm gonna go for because the move speed is a little better. We're gonna be running cloth pants. You know, light Akaten is a pretty good choice always, like I mentioned before, for any non-plate melee class if you're looking to maximize your HP, magic resist, and everything really. So we don't really bother with getting extra strength on Bonk Wiz because you're never gonna hit 15 anyway. So what we do instead is we just maximize our magical damage, and Staff Mastery on its own is just crazy. We're going to use the magic staff and not the quarter staff because the magical staff has magical damage on it, which scales much better. So for the spells, you would run Fireball and Magic Missile probably, but then you would get rid of these in place of these 3 here. So you're going to run Ignite, haste, and invis. Ignite is the most important thing for Bonk Wiz. It's what actually allows you to do damage, and it scales with your magical damage and your staff mastery. So you're going to want to run Ignite, and then haste is really important, and then invis as well, so that you can just ignite, haste, invis, get right up on somebody and bonk them. And then yeah, you'll probably want to bring these two. You could get rid of magic missile and put on zap, I guess. But basically you want fireball, and you want one other long range spell, and then you want these three here. Obviously, if you're playing a caster wizard, you're going to want to run pretty much all knowledge gear. But most importantly, we're running the knowledge for the spellcasting speed. So for every 1 knowledge, you get 2% spellcasting speed, which means this is going to go by 4% when I put it on. Alright guys, so now we're going to move on to Druid, and my personal favorite Druid build, and the only one that I think is worth running right now, besides full healer, is the kind of hybrid build. I think this is the best right now in Squire. You're actually going to be able to do damage to people and have your shapeshifts on. You're going to want to run these shapeshift abilities. You're going to want human, panther, chicken, rat, and bear. Bear's pretty much the only shapeshift form that you're going to be able to fight people with. Maybe Panther if you have a wizard you're chasing and they're 1 HP, but otherwise Panther sucks. You lose a lot of PDR. It's just terrible right now, so yeah, just build a little strength, go for bear. Rat when you need to get away from people, and chicken you can heal yourself with. So alright, so for gear, it's a little bit hard actually to build in Squire. We're going to see if I can even get this right, but we're going to want a little bit of knowledge, and we're going to want a little bit of strength. So let's see, what options do we have here? And it's not much, but probably a padded tunic, and then maybe we can go for some leather chousies. And then for the gloves, we're probably going to want strength, and for the boots we might want strength too. But let's see where our knowledge is at, and if we can even play the class. Honestly, I think this is fine how it is. You can probably hold off on getting Treant until you get a little bit more mimcap. You should be able to find some mimcap in the game, but yeah, you're going to want to build obviously a little bit of strength so that you can do damage. And I'm running the Ifrit skin. You could probably, instead of Ifrit, you could probably run the demon as well. I think that's probably better. You get a little bit more strength. But yeah, the idea with this build is we're going to be able to use heals, and we're also going to be able to go into our bear form and do damage. So for the perks, let's just take a look at all of the perks and skills that we have available. Thorncoat is very, very good, as is Spirit Bond. This one's kind of slept on by some people, but especially when you're in bear form and you get all that extra PDR and health, being able to take a little damage away from your teammates is like insane. It works way better than it should and way better than you'd think it will. Natural healing, this one is just really, really useful in every scenario, so I keep it on usually. And then also Sun and Moon. An extra 3 Vigor is like an extra 4 or 5 health, probably. So this is pretty much what our friend was using in Squires yesterday, and we just ran through and dominated the lobby for like hours. So yeah, highly recommend this build here, or something very similar to it. Let's just talk about the other options though. If you wanted to go like full healer, Squire, it's kind of iffy because you don't have any like actual magic healing gear, but you probably want to run Dreamwalk and obviously Life Bloom Aura, and I would probably put those on instead of Thorncoat and Sun and Moon. Put on Orb of Nature, Bark Skin, you know, you'd probably be running all of these if you could. Tree of Life is one of the most important ones in the game. Orb of Nature is just like an extra Nature's Touch, and then Bark Skin's really helpful for your front lines as well. So you put Bark Skin on, Tree of Life, heal them up, Dreamfire the enemies to heal them with Nature's Touch. Like, it's very effective still in Squire, but it's just not quite as good as the hybrid build, in my opinion. But yeah, with that one you would want to put on knowledge gear. Alright, so Warlock is in a really good spot right now, and you have a ton of options on how you want to build Warlock. So I'm going to start off with traditional caster Warlock, and what we're going to want to do for that is obviously we want Torture Mastery and Vampirism so that we can heal off of our curses. And then you're probably going to want to run something like, maybe you could use Anti-Magic as a placeholder, you could use Malice, and you could also use Dark Reflection, but I probably wouldn't on a caster. Curse Mastery actually heals you a little bit more, but it doesn't do more damage. Like, it would make you believe that you were going to do more damage since your curses last longer. That's not how it works. It is very good. It helps you keep sustain longer. You also have Soul Collector, which is really good. And let's see, for any final picks here, Dark Enhancement actually is really good for Dark Bolts, and it also works with Dark Reflection. Malice probably is your best bet. Infernal Pledge is just a PvE thing. Immortal Lament is really good. You could use that if you don't want to kill yourself by casting, but personally I probably would run it like this. So now we got to build the gear up really quickly. So we're gonna go with a spellbook and a longsword. Since we're not building any damage or anything, obviously you have to have the Occultist Hood and the Mystic Gloves for the 2 magic healing. That's kind of sad, but that's all you get. We're probably going to be running an Oracle Robe, as well as some leather chassis and some low boots. Alright, so now when we go back to our spells, this is usually what I'm going to run when I'm playing a caster lock. You get exactly enough Mimcap with this build to get everything you need. This works. It's still really good. Alright, so now I'm going to go with a Bach lock build, and there's 2 ways you can do it. You can do a hybrid, or you can do full Phantomized Bach. Okay? The full Phantomized Bach is the easier one, and that's what I'm going to show you first. So we're going to be doing Demon Armor with Dark Reflection, and then we're going to... I don't like Shadow Touch really, I just think it's kind of useless. Malice is always a good option, and so is Anti-Magic, but you could also use Soul Collector. So then we got to switch it up, and we're basically building it like a fighter. You can use a halberd, or you can use a longsword, falchion, and heater shield. You could use Chris Dagger, which I don't personally like. Magic Staff actually is crazy with Bach, and it does a lot of damage, so you do have that option as well. And then for gear, it's a little tough on Warlock because you need to be fast enough, but also you need to be quite tanky. So I'm gonna just, go with Visored Barbuda Helm. Even though you lose a little bit of headshot damage reduction, it's got really good rolls on it, so I like the Visored Barbuda. And then for gloves, we're actually going to go with as much agi as we can here, so I'm going to go with these, and then we're going to get some turn shoes. And then for the other 2 pieces, we're just going to go as tanky as we can, and Templar armor is really good, but again, Dark Cuirass is the best, so we're going to run Dark Cuirass. And then I'm going to put on some plate pants and see what my move speed is. I'm probably going to be too slow. So yeah, 285. When you go into Phantomize, you do get 5% move speed bonus though. So this actually is fine, I think, right here. Your action speed is really bad, but that's just going to happen when you're playing Warlock. You could switch your skin to put on the Dex Cat instead of the Agi Cat, but then you'd be even slower. 40% PDR. A little bit of magic power bonus, but negative fizz power bonus. So actually, I take it back. We're not going to run the Visored Barbuda. We're going to run the Armit. Alright, so final build here. You look like a weird turtle with this skin on, but it's fine. 284 move speed, but you have the Phantomize to get you a little bit faster. Running Demon Armor, Dark Reflection, Soul Collector with Anti-Magic, and BOC. So our final stats are, we're going to have 284 move speed, we're slow, we swing pretty slow, but you are using a halberd, so you kill people in 1 or 2 hits. Got 41% PDR, 22, which is actually 42% MDR, and then we're right at the threshold for fist power bonus, which is good, and then magic power bonus as well. Honestly, if you wanted to be a little bit faster, you could just do cloth pants. Losing a little bit of PDR is not that big of a deal when you're already pretty tanky. So, losing about 4% or 5% PDR to gain 4 move speed and a little bit of action speed, it's not a bad idea. You could also just get rid of Phantomize in this case and just put on Blood Pact. Blood Pact makes you even more tanky and have even more health. It's very good. Plus you can heal yourself using Exploitation Strike when you're in demon form. Like I said, there's a lot of options here. You could also run spells with this. Depending on whether you wanted Blood Pact or BOC. I'd probably keep these on if I was doing a hybrid build. But okay, so sure you can heal yourself when you have Torture Mastery on, but it doubles all your spell costs, and you don't have any magic healing anyway, so I would probably just keep this going. I'd probably just keep exactly what I got here, on the build. And then Curse of Weakness, I think this is the best Warlock spell. This just kind of evens the playing field when you're going up against like a fighter or a barbarian. It'll put their stats down at a level that makes it a little bit closer to yours, so it's a very, very strong curse. All right, now we're gonna move on to Bard. I'm gonna talk about the gear first a little bit here. You want to build a little bit of knowledge on Bard, and you want to build like a little bit of strength and vigor too. So I use the open sallet or the open sallet just to get that one extra knowledge. It also gives you PDR and a little bit more headshot reduction than the leather cap does. But you could use anything really. The headshot reduction isn't critical. I just like having a little bit of extra armor and PDR, so I tend to use the open sallet. Instead of the heavy gambeson, you could run light agaton. Again, that's a pretty good option. And then the most important stat on Bard is dexterity, and then obviously we're wanting a little bit of dex and strength on these rolls. So just going back really quick to the Squire, you know, you could use a falchion because that thing just like hits so hard. You don't have to use the buckler. Obviously lantern shield is a super good option, but I always use serve bow on Bard, even though crossbow does way more damage. And Squire, probably crossbow's better, to be honest with you. And so you could also use a Stefan Beret. It helps a little bit with your dex, because that's what you're kind of lacking in the most in Squire. So there's a few different options. I mean, ideally you want to get your action speed as high as possible. So yeah, something like this, I mean, is a pretty decent starter build, but you know, you're pretty squishy. All right, and then as far as skills go, we're going to be always using charismatic performance on Bard. I like War Song. In Squire, you're probably going to need Lore Mastery, and Rapier Mastery is really good too. So you have the option to use Dancing Feet, but I wouldn't really do that unless you're like just trying to use a Piercing Shrill build. Vermata's good if you're playing Adventure Mode or whatever, and you're just trying to open shit fast. Jolly Time's really good if you wanted to build the Inale build, but not in Squire. Lock Protection's actually pretty good too, but we're not going to use it in Squire. Wanderer's Luck, again, in like a more of a setting where you're trying to loot, and you have the option to not fight people, I would use Wanderer's Luck once in a while. But in Squire Royale, where you're fighting the whole time, you're just going to want to focus on what is most beneficial to your damage and your team. Super Dexterity doesn't really help a whole lot in this mode. You could use Storyteller if you've got a caster on your team. That one's actually extremely good for them. You just probably get rid of War Song for that. Then, okay, so this is how I have got my songs set up. I pretty much stay consistent in this. The only thing is I'll put Unchained Harmony on here, and then I'll put my Accelerando on like for my last pick. Because I don't use Accelerando or Allegro a whole lot in combat. It's just, it takes up time and it doesn't last very long. But okay, so the basics, you know, you've got your Aria of Alacrity, and then you've got Rousing Rhythm, Speech of Alacrity, and Ballad of Courage. These are the most important Bard songs, along with Shriek of Weakness, which is actually still really good now. I like to run Harmonic Shield just to make myself a little bit more tanky, because as you can see, we are really not tanky at all in Squire. So I put all like my in-combat buffs and debuffs on my second music slot. Obviously, Shriek of Weakness, when you're getting ready to go fight somebody, you lower their armor rating and their fizz damage bonus, which is really important. Lament of Langor is incredibly useful. It reduces all of their movement speed by 10. And then you've also got Piercing Shrill. This one's so annoying, but so good if you want to hold down like a doorway or anything. And then if nobody's bringing in lockpicks, or you know, you want to be able to open doors quickly, Unchained is very good for just moving through the dungeon quickly, opening doors without having to touch them. And then I usually put on Accelerando here, but you also have the option of putting on Tranquility. Or if you wanted to be really cheesy, you could do Song of Shadow. And again, if you have a caster, you could use Corral of Clarity to help them get spells back faster. Chaotic Discord, Peacemaking, and Song of Silence. I don't really use those a whole lot. If you wanted to use Song of Silence to disrupt casters, you also have the option to just do Dissonance, which silences them for 2 seconds. And then Banshee's Howl, I don't think is any better than Shriek of Weakness, so I don't really tend to use it. And then Den of Darkness is just kind of like Piercing Shrill, but worse. Alright guys, next up we are going to be taking a look at Barbarian. Barbarian's super good in Squire. It's just incredibly strong. Bardiche is a really good weapon. You have so much strength and vigor. You're at 152 HP. I'm going to use the Visored Sallet because it's got really high headshot damage reduction and pretty good armor. It's got Agi and Dex on it. Studded Leather has magic resist on it, as well as having really good armor as well with strength and vigor. Cloth pants are just really good. Turn shoes really good, as we've talked about before. And, you know, riveted gloves or reinforced, either one. But I'm using Bardiche along with a club and a round shield. And then for perks, I'm going to be using Robust and Iron Will 90% of the time. Potion Chugger and Squire is incredibly good, especially if you don't have a healer. And then I like Axe Specialization, but again, there's so many good options on Barbarian. You could run Berserker so that you can move faster and do more damage the more you get hit. You could also use Crush to just break down the wooden doors. Executioner obviously is really good if you can hit headshots. Skull Splitter, I don't ever really find a spot for it, but it's still pretty good. And then don't use Savage and troll your team. Just wear a chest piece so you can actually like play the game right. Morale boost is really good if you don't have a healer and you want to be able to quickly reset between fights. Potion Chugger along with morale boost is kind of broken. Heavy Swing is also really good, especially if you're using Whirlwind, which is another option that I'll talk about in a second, but I like Savage Roar and Rage. Rage is single-handedly the best Barbarian skill. Like, it's so good, you get so much move speed and extra strength. Savage Roar reduces physical damage by 30%, and it reduces their move speed. So Savage Roar, in addition to being really great for PvP, is also useful for PvE. So if you get stuck in a corner and you got mobs all over you, just hit Savage Roar and they'll go away. So yeah, I don't usually use Two-Hander or Treacherous Slungs in Squire. I think this is probably your best setup. As I said, probably either Morale Boost could go here, or Berserker could go here, or Crush. And then, okay, so just looking at the rest of the skills, you've got Achilles Strike. This one's really useful in solos, and it helps you to catch people if you can hit them with that Franny. Blood Exchange isn't really quite where it used to be, but it can still be quite deadly if you've got a Whirlwind on, and yeah, you're using like a Bardiche or War Maul. Finishing Blow kind of, I don't like it. Reckless is still really good. You can pretty much one-tap fighters with it. Hurl Weapon is okay, you just gotta hit those shots, but it's still a really good ranged option for Barb. Warcry, not as good in Squire, but still an option. War Sacrifice I don't ever use, I don't think it's good at all. Grappling Hook is pretty good, you can use Achilles or Grappling Hook interchangeably. And then obviously Whirlwind is very strong, and yeah, being able to hit people through walls with it is kind of stupid, but it is what it is. Alright, so last but not least, we're going to be looking at Sorcerer, and I'm going to be completely honest, this one I don't have a whole lot of experience compared to some of my other classes. As you can see, I only got 168 fame on Sorc. But I do know how to play it a little bit, so I'm going to do my best here, and if you see anything that I gloss over, or, you know, that I just flat out tell you incorrect about, please feel free to leave a comment and tell me what I did wrong. Help everybody else out here. Alright, so what I would run if I was going to play Sorc is I would do Innate Talent with Spell Sculpting. I think these are almost like a given, no matter what. And then I think Mana Flow is pretty good, getting that extra magical damage bonus. And then Manifold, I think this one looks pretty good to me. I don't remember using it a whole lot before, and I know they've changed it a lot. But I think, you know, 25% cooldown reduction is pretty nice. Even though you lose the 15% spellcasting speed, you gain 10 back here from Innate Talent. So, again, I haven't really played around with this a whole lot, and I know that your spellcasting speed probably is atrocious with this, but I think you could also use, what is it, like Air Mastery? Yeah, I think you could probably use, like, Air Mastery. Alright, so, yeah, I think about 99% of Sorc players are going to be using this exact setup, more or less. You've got Flame Strike and Eruption, which together you make Wall of Fire with, or you can cast them individually if you're getting chased. Then we've got Ice Spear and Lightning Bolt. Those combine together to make Frost Lightning, which is the one that can stop people and freeze them. And then what you're going to want to do is cast Fire Arrow along with Water Bolt to make an Elemental Bolt. The main combo of Sorc is to use Frost Lightning and then hit them with an LE Bolt while they're frozen. And then, you know, you've got Wind Blast and Fire Orb just to kind of get people away from you. Fire Orb really hurts a lot if you hit them with it. And Wind Blast obviously to knock people back. And then if you get a little bit of knowledge, you can actually use Lightning Vortex, or you can use them again separately. This one knocks people away from you, and this one electrocutes them. And for the purposes of this video, I'm actually going to try Spell Stride instead of Manifold and just see how it goes. Having a little trouble here with mobs. This is okay. This is okay. We're alright. Oh god. Oh, this is so hard. I'm so garbage at this class, guys. I'm so garbage. I'm so actually garbage. I cannot play this class. It's okay, it's the first time I've played this class in like a year. I'm gonna cut myself a little slack.